This is just a quick DIY carve a pumpkin video. Bought this knife at the local No Frills grocery store, and it was $1. It was only $1. I've drawn on it with some pen. And I used all straight lines because sometimes it's hard to cut in a circle with a knife, you know what I mean, a straight blade. And I marked a keyway at the back of the lid, so I'm going to cut that key notch there so I know exactly which way the lid goes on. I'm going to cut the lid out first. Let's do it. Be very careful. Has to be on a slight angle outward, and then the lid will come off. Same with any other notches. I drew a line on here with a pen, and I'm going to try my best to follow that line. Okay, so I've cut all the way around. I'm going to cut the key notch now. Just like that. So that notch, it only goes one way to the back. And then after you cut the top off, you get all these lovely guts. I'm going to take the knife. I'm going to leave like about an inch. You want to make sure it's thick enough to last a few days or last a week or whatever before Halloween. You want to take some of these guts out. Oh, look at that guts. What works really good for this is a spoon. I suppose I could go get one. I don't know if that's overkill or not, but it certainly does a good job, so maybe that's not overkill. Maybe it's just right. You can get LED lights, you can get candles, whatever. There's different ways to illuminate these. But if you're going to put a candle in it, you want to make sure that you got a nice flat base to mount your candle on or to sit your candle in. Pumpkin guts. It's pretty much cleaned out there. I have a face drawn on it using all straight lines. The teeth are diamonds, the eyes are triangles, the nose is basically an upside down triangle. And yeah, be very, very careful, because if your knife is sharp or if you slip, you do not want to cut yourself. I would recommend some work gloves. I'm cutting on a slight inward angle so that way the eyeball pops out freely, just like that. It looks like we're off to a good start here. Draw on there anything that you want. But the classic jack-o'-lantern is usually an evil face or an angry face. There, you'll see it's tapered on the inside. Nice big cutout. You get your and with your tapered cuts, it looks really cool. The eyes look really cool. You get a shadow around them, like when it's lit up with a candle or a light. You'll see later. So you can do anything you want, really, if you want to spend enough time. I like these triangle cuts and these straight line cuts because it's so simple with a knife like this. But I've seen some really fancy, intricate ones too, like some people do some pretty fancy stuff with pumpkins, pumpkins and knives nowadays. But I'm not doing anything too fancy here. One of my favorite mottos is keep it simple. Right now I'm using my two fingers in his eyeball, or one finger in his eyeball. Now, if you want to make sure that your pumpkin is not soft and squishy, like if it is, you don't want to do that. You don't want to collapse it or squish it or break it. So far, so good. There is there's some growth or some scars on the outside of the pumpkin. That's perfectly fine. That just makes it look awesomer sprig. And at nighttime, all you're gonna see is the eyeballs and the mouth and the nose. You're not gonna see the pumpkin itself. You just see the light coming through. The pumpkin's always sitting on the ground on a vine, so there's always a dirty spot on every pumpkin where it's been sitting. So I use the dirty side on the back side. Now I'm going to cut out the teeth, but I'm only going to cut out the center diamonds. I'm going to be leaving the top and bottom triangles for the teeth. They're going to stay. And then eventually your long straight lines are easier to cut. Just be careful on the angles that you cut at, so your voids will come out. The teeth is going to be the hardest part, I think. And you want to be careful because there's going to be weak points. Right now I'm close to the nose and it's hollow, so be careful. So there's my first void, but what I did was I didn't cut the diamond out. I cut an X, a bigger X on the left side of the nose and a bigger X on the right side of the nose. So it's easier to cut long straight line than it is to cut these tiny little diamond lines. So I'm just going to keep cutting my big X's. You know, just try to take your time and do the best you can. There's the side piece. Just keep on trucking. Finish the process. Keep your lines straight for the teeth. When I say straight, I mean keep your knife pointed towards the core, towards the very center of the pumpkin. Being very careful where you put your hands and where you put your knife and where you put pressure. Not to break the pumpkin and not to cut yourself at the same time. I have a machete and I was thinking about destroying it with a machete. I have a chainsaw. Anyway, here is the pumpkin. It's hollow. There's a couple chunks in there. I'll turn it upside down and shake it. It's not quite level on the bottoms, but I can work with that. I'll just take my spoon and carve it till it's flat. you got to be careful not to carve through to this core, or carve all the way through, but I'll just make it flat so I can put a pumpkin in there, or sorry, a candle. You can put lights in them, like LED lights and stuff, but for a classic jack-o'-lantern, and for that evil ambience and that eerie, you know, you really want creepy flickering candle in there, and it's just so much more better than an LED or whatever. You can get those fake LED or those fake candles, and they flicker, but they're actually a light, a battery powered light, but they'd flicker like a candle. You can get those. That's about as close as you can get to a proper flickering candle. If there's anything you want to trim up, now would be the time. I have a couple pen lines, like blue ink, but just lightly rub it with a scour pad, and most of that ink will come off. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Got the evil jack-o'-lantern. Here's the lid. You notice that there's a notch on one side. With that notch, you know for sure that it only goes one way, so the notch goes to the back side. That's the way I do it anyway. Notch to the back side. There's the lid. There's the jack-o'-lantern. There's my knife. Yeah, I think my other pumpkin from last year, it had a ScarFace. Maybe I'll do that real quick and I'll show you how to do that. So for the ScarFace, for the Tony Montana, all you do is take your line, whichever angle you want it to be at, and you don't go all the way through the pumpkin. And you cut on an angle, like a serious angle. And then you come back from the other side. All you do is cut the skin, the tough skin. All you do is cut that. So you come back on the other side and you give it that, so you can open up your wound like that. Okay? That's your Tony Montana. That's your ScarFace. And sometimes when you pierce the skin, the light will shine through a little bit. It's not carved all the way through, but just enough to give you a cool effect. And if you look at the thumbnail from the one I carved last year, I did some fake vampire blood, like corn syrup or whatever you buy for fake blood. And I dripped fake blood around his mouth, I think. His eye and his mouth. I can't remember. But yeah, some of those effects, like blood, you might not even see that at nighttime when it's lit up. But that's up to you entirely. Anyway, I hope you liked this episode. And have a nice day.